All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and to all my non-binary friends, welcome to the Break the System Green Party Congressional Candidates Forum. My name is Patrick Dillon. I am the co-chair of the Longmont Green Party here in beautiful Colorado, and your host this evening. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we have 4 congressional candidates from across the nation joining us to discuss their campaigns, the issues they care about, how you can support their campaigns, and lastly, why they think you should be running for office in your local community. I want to be sure to thank each and every one of them before we begin. So thank you to Jason Call, running to represent Washington's 2nd District for being here. Thank you, Christina, for running for Senate in New Jersey. Justin for running for Senate in Connecticut. Sean for running in California's 19th District. And these are all Green Party candidates running for federal office. You're not going to hear that on the news, but these are 4 federal candidates on the Green Party ticket that you can vote for, that you can support. Now, as your host, I believe it's my job to talk less, and it's more so to organize and prepare. So here's what you can expect over the next hour. Each candidate will get 10 minutes to speak. They may or may not take questions from me or the chat. I'm not going to be unmuting anyone, because I want to make sure that we're staying on schedule. Before I begin the forum, however, I would like to address a matter that has impacted us in one way or another. I believe that we must acknowledge, if not all of us, most of us have food in our stomachs or in our homes. We must acknowledge that most of us, if not all of us, have running water at our disposal. We must acknowledge that most of us, if not all of us, have a place to call our own. That is not the case in Gaza. For the last 90 days, millions of people have been victim of a genocide, resulting in tens of thousands of deaths, entire neighborhoods leveled, hospitals turned into battlefields. All of this happening in part due to our government's support of these war crimes. Weapons, military strategy, financial support provided to the Israeli government in our name. I hope you will join me for a moment of silence to respect the lives lost and acknowledge the crimes against humanity happening as we join together here to create a better future for our nation and a more peaceful world. We can start that moment now. Thank you all so much. All right, so our first candidate here today is Jason. Jason, I want to thank you, first of all, for just being a huge advocate for Green Party candidates, regardless of title across the country. And everything that you're doing is just, I love seeing it online. So thank you for being here, and thank you for running.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for holding this forum. And thank you also to my colleagues across the country for running in their races also. And special thank you to my Green Party friends in Washington State for being so supportive of my campaign. I am running for Washington's 2nd District. It is a seat held by a Democrat. He is arguably the worst Democrat in Washington State, a guy by the name of Rick Larsen. I don't want to give him too much airtime, but in terms of corporate funding and being pro all of the things that we are against and against all the things that we are for, he's definitely somebody who can stand to be replaced. This is my 3rd run for the seat. In my prior 2 runs, I did run as a Democrat. As soon as the 2022 primary was over, I was not going to run for this seat, but I had some other people reach out to me and say, you know what, you have done really well. You should go again. I said, yes, but I'm not going to do it as a Democrat. And that's when my friends in the Green Party reached out to me and said, would you run as a Green? And I said, let's do it. So here I am proudly as a Green candidate for Congress. Interestingly enough, I did not have to change a thing in my platform when I switched over to the Green Party. So ostensibly, I was running as a Green candidate within the Democratic Party. And of course, you can imagine the pushback I got from the Democrats seeking accountability in that corporate-owned party. But a little bit about myself. I am 52 years old. I have a couple of children. My youngest is 18, just turned 18 yesterday, is about to graduate from high school this year. And part of the reason that I have gotten involved in activism over my entire life is because I want a better future for my kids, and I want a better future for your kids, and I want a better future for the kids all across the planet. The way things are going right now with our government and around the world, we are in a state of extreme precariousness with climate, with economy, with accumulation of wealth, and division, and income inequality, with leaning towards more and more authoritarianism in this country, in the Democratic Party. Um, there is so much that needs to be fixed, and I think it's so important that people like us, like the Green Party, like myself, stand up and I will just acknowledge that I'm a middle class, working class white guy. I have that power in the system, and I have always over my lifetime wanted to use the fact that I am a white guy to elevate the voices of others, and to make sure that we get a more diverse spectrum of representation, and that our system works better for everybody and not just the white male dominant paradigm that we have in this country. So I want to acknowledge that. I mean, three of the four of us here are white men. And I think what we really need to do is to, should we get elected, we need to seek every avenue to hand power back to the people. Like I've said in many statements, I am not running for myself. I'm not running to make a career out of being a congressman. What I'm running to do is to share power and to diversify power in a country where power is extremely concentrated among uh, mostly white, male, wealthy people. So I've been an activist for my entire life. I got started in activism in 1990 when I was 19 years old. I protested the first Desert Storm War. I spent nights on the steps of the Capitol, of the Federal Building in Seattle. And we tangled with police a little bit. It wasn't too testy, but I got my feet wet with activism and started getting involved in more left-wing movements. And I say that as somebody who came from a very sheltered conservative background. My father was Air Force. I grew up in white rural Washington, which is extremely conservative. And when I went to the University of Washington as a freshman, I really had my eyes opened, and I kind of had a revelation that said, hey, all the things that I was raised with, the way my parents raised me, are clearly false when you actually get out into the world and you meet people and you have diverse experiences. And so when I felt like I had been essentially lied to by my upbringing, I got very incensed by that and said, well, I don't want this to happen to other people. And I want myself to be sort of a case in point that you don't have to have that kind of upbringing. And when you learn better, you can turn around and say, hey, this is not the way things are. You can work for a better future. I was never taught growing up to necessarily work for a better future. I was raised in the 80s in a very sort of Reagan capitalist household. But I came to learn very quickly, like I said, at the age of 19, at a very young age, that things aren't the way I was raised or the way I was taught. Um, so I feel like I have a responsibility knowing that to the other people out there who are raised in those backgrounds to say, hey, there is a better way for our future. And so I've been an activist for my entire life. anti-war activism. I got involved in single-payer healthcare activism in the early 2000s because the for-profit insurance companies killed my mother. My mother's story was basically she went in for a routine surgery. The insurance companies denied her extra stay that she needed for recovery, and they sent her home early. And basically, it didn't kill her on the spot, but it eventually killed her because she needed extra stay. And that's a bean counter thing. That's insurance companies with their sort of actuary assessments of how they're going to make money. That system, private for-profit insurance system that we have in this country, is criminal, it's parasitic, and it doesn't serve the public. So I have been on the board of Whole Washington here in Washington State for the last 5 years. We are one of the strongest single-payer healthcare advocacy movements in the country, trying to get a bill passed in the Washington State Legislature for single-payer healthcare. I've been involved in environmental activism. I have been involved in, I was a high school math teacher for almost 20 years. So I've been a union member, building rep, elected to the board of my local education association multiple years, and a union activist for, the 20 years that I was in education. I am a huge supporter of labor rights, and I would say that the thing that gives me the most hope for the future right now is the growing strike movement, and particularly the growing strike movement and labor awareness among young people. So we do have a lot to build on in this country, and I think that people like us stepping up, and I would encourage anybody in the same position to run for office, whether it's city council, county council, school board. There are so many offices that we could run for to get our voices and our perspective out there. I know Congress is a big bite to take, but it's the thing that spoke to me as what I needed to do. It doesn't have to be the thing that speaks to you, but if you can run for any local office as a Green Party member, as a leftist, as a socialist, as somebody who really wants to serve truth and justice, then I encourage anybody to step up for that office and reach out to your friends and neighbors for help, and reach out to the Green Party for help. So you can learn more about me at callforcongress.com. I don't see a chat bar here where I am in Zoom, but it's callforcongress.com, just my name, CALLFOR Congress.com. I've got a full platform of issues. You probably wouldn't be too surprised at any of the things that you read on my page if you're a Green Party member, but I'm solidly in support and in defense of those principles, and have been for my entire lifetime. So if anybody, I don't know if we're doing any kind of questions, Patrick, but I feel like I've spoken my piece there. People get a sense of who I am. Please reach out to me. Email me, jason@callforcongress.com. We have a chance to win this race. I came in third in the top 2 primary in this state, or in this district. I came in third, a very, very close third. In 2020, I was only 2,600 votes behind second place, which would have gotten me onto the ballot next to the incumbent. And if I can get onto the ballot next to the incumbent in 2024, after our August 6th primary, I'm pretty confident that I can beat him down the stretch to November. So
Thank you so much.
the
Thank you
race
so much
worth
for that,
investing in.
Jason.
Thank you.
So there was a chat feature on my end. It is not showing up on anyone else's. So if you guys want to work with me on the fly here, if you want to take questions from people, we can ask people to unmute. And as for campaign websites and donation details, everyone who registered today to join this event will get a follow-up email in the next day or two with everyone's information there. So I want to make sure everyone has access to that. I do see one hand up. I see Tom Wells. Let's see. How you doing, Tom?
Oh, I'm doing great. Good to see all you green guys. I did have a specific question, which is working in my campaign very well, which is, are you aware of Article 3, Section 1 of the Constitution, which says that judges shall serve on good behavior, all judges, and that they are not behaving well, and the contrapositive should be exactly the same force?
Yeah, unfortunately, the question needs to be directed and focused on our Green Party campaigns.
Well,
and we do have 3 other candidates. So
yes, I'm trying to get to the point.
Okay.
And that is, would you consider running on overthrowing the Supreme Court before they overthrow us? They are the root of all the problems we have in this country.
Well, I think that's too much of an issue to get into right now. I'm certainly opposed to the way the Supreme Court is operating right now. So we can talk about that, Tom. We're connected. I know we're connected on Twitter. I'd be happy to have further conversation with you about that and what the pathway to promoting that idea might be. Certainly not opposed to it.
Thank you for that, Tom. Amy, did you have a question for Jason? Yes? Okay. All right. And then we'll go to Christina next after this question.
Hi, Jason. Thank you everyone for your emails and for allowing me to join you. While I was looking for details about the meeting, thinking I might have missed something, there's a gent in the National Green Party comments on Twitter. I believe his name is Funzo, who seems, shall we say, super passionate about the rights of injured workers. Have you been able to discuss any of that with people? Do you have anything to say about that?
So I know Darren Fonzo, and there are some things that I would like to say, but I can't say them publicly. And if you've had engagement with Darren, you probably have an idea of the things that I might say. That's not something that I want to go into on this forum. But if you want to connect with me on the side, I know what his issues are. But his approach to them is entirely inappropriate. So if we can connect on the side, Amy, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Jason at callforcongress.com.
Thank you for your question, Amy. All right, our next candidate, Christina, how are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so my name's Christina Khalil. I am a first generation Egyptian and I grew up in foster care. So where I'm from is all over the state of New Jersey. And I put my way, I don't know how, but it was the miracle of Allah. I put my way through undergrad and graduate school, but I have my master's in social work and I'm working on my third license right now while I'm doing all this. I work 2 jobs. I work a full-time and a part-time, and I'm doing this campaign full-time as well on top of it. And I'm studying for a third license. So it's a lot of balancing and learning to manage my time. And I'm fighting to make sure all the struggles and trials and tribulations and everything that I've gone through, where it's like the anxiety of, like where a person's going to get their next meal, are you going to be homeless, and all that wonderful stuff, because I was also a homeless teenager and a homeless young adult. And I just want to make sure that nobody ever has to experience that fear. And the moment I got stability in my life is the moment I felt like 50 tons like lifted from my shoulders. And I want to give that back to every single citizen in this country. I'm not running for myself. I've been studying this since 2018, and I had to go with it with a pure heart and pure mind because I understood the stress that was going to go into this. But on a federal level, we can get universal health care and free education, and we have to do both together. We can't have one without the other. And we could do that within the first year or 2 years. And then we need to have clean water. Everybody should have access to clean water, because even though Nestle said that it's not a human right, I believe it is a human right, and everyone deserves clean drinking water. We also need to make sure everybody is housed, and we want to, and one of the biggest things, I'm fighting for a lot of big things, but one of the biggest things that have been coming up recently is the 13th Amendment, and I'm fighting to amend the 13th Amendment because I feel like a lot of our root causes are surrounded by at least in New Jersey it is, by the 13th Amendment and funneling more people into the prison system, and the goal is to reduce that. And I've done a lot of research and I have experience within the prison system. I've worked with DCPMP, parole, probation. I've argued with judges, lawyers. I worked in the hospital from the beginning to the end of the COVID epidemic. So I've seen a lot, I've done a lot. And the goal is just there's too many people slipping through the cracks, and I've always fought to make sure people didn't slip through the cracks. And I'm but more people nowadays are slipping through the cracks, and it's gotten so inhumane. So my opponent, I decided to run against him because he's done a lot of unethical things. I don't want to say his name, but it's Menendez Sr. He is literally like a comic book villain. There's been a murder he's covered up, unveiled. He's Gold Bar Bob's now. But unfortunately, he's not the only person that's that corrupt running for the seat. So I'm going against an entire machine in the state of New Jersey. And I am truly the underdog. And then I got blacklisted from mainstream media. I was on News 12, and then all of a sudden my interview vanished, and they won't talk to me anymore. Since they realize I switched to the Green Party. I started as a progressive Democrat, but the Dems in New Jersey said no matter what, they're going to vote for Menendez. You can't run because you have to get picked to run. It's a popularity contest. You have to wait to get asked. And they push all progressive Dems out, and it's so nasty. So there was no way I could win as a progressive Dem, and the Green Party reached out to me, and I realized everything we do aligns, and I have an entire party backing me up. So I was like, why not make the switch to the people that actually do care and the only ethical party out there? So I think that would be it for my introduction. Does anyone have any questions? Or no questions?
I mean, if they don't have a question, I'll ask a question.
Okay.
Oh, all right. You are unmuted.
Oh, thanks. Sorry, I had to turn off my camera. It's being really wonky. Christina, it's great to hear from you. I think I saw you on Howie Hawkins' program a while back as well. Is there any decent alternative media in Jersey who you can reach out to? I'm just curious because that's where I'm from. Thanks.
So I actually pulled up a list, and I'm gonna go through it, and I'm going to reach out to my team to see what they think would be worth the while to reach out. But so far, a lot of people are just like, no. No, mainstream people are like, no, but I'm trying to figure out a way to get to the general public in New Jersey.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Yep.
I think COVID-19 showed us and is continuing to show us the necessity for universal healthcare.
Oh, yes.
And I guess my question is, there are some people who talk about Medicare for all and beyond. There's some people that just say Medicare for all. There's some people that just use universal healthcare, and there's just not a whole lot of detail there. I'm not asking you to write out an insurance policy, but what do you think in universal healthcare means to you?
Oh, well, that would be in my policy that I've written, and we're editing right now to put on the website. It should be updated in a week and a half. But universal health care, it's going to be a combination of Bernie Sanders and Howie Hawkins, both of their policies. And it's going to be with a little bit of a twist. Because what a lot of people don't realize, in order for universal health care to actually be successful, we really need to have free education, not just to the 4-degree level. We need to go to doctorate and master's and beyond. And the reason being, the moment we have universal health care is the moment we're going to hit a drought and a shortage of nurses, doctors, and medical professionals and social workers. We are not going to be able to keep up with the demand. And the duopoly is going to set it up that way so it fails, because, I try to think ahead of the opponents, and they're going to say, look, it didn't work, so now we have to go back to the way it went. So we can tie it in, and it's actually much cheaper to go to universal healthcare. I forgot the documentary. Jason, maybe what is the recent documentary that
Healing Us?
Yes, Healing Us. Healing Us has brought and educated me that it's much cheaper to go to universal healthcare or Medicare for all whatever label is on it is going to have the same policy on the outline. And then the money left over really is going to pay for education, but our education, is really also paid for. The debt's already been paid off, so we could just cancel it and we could just, move forward. But that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
So my universal healthcare or Medicare for all, whichever name you want to give it, is going to have free education intertwined so we can keep up with the demand. And also, when I get into office, is setting up a whole bunch of medical professionals, because I know a little bit about the hospital and the doctors, and I know nurses already know more than a doctor. Sorry if there's any MDs here, but I'll go to a nurse on a patient before I go to a doctor on a patient. And how can we get more people, do a speed up track for nurses to become nurse practitioners? How do we get people to get thank you for advertising that. That's a good documentary, guys. Check it out. And how do we get more people to be doctors and really focus on the quality of care? Instead of, we don't want to funnel people in and out. So that would be how we're going to move forward with that.
Thank you. All right. Let me double check one more time that no one else is waiting to ask a question real quick before we move on to our next candidate. All right. Thank you so much, Christina. Our next candidate is Sean. There you are.
There we go. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Hi. I'm not going to fill 10 minutes. I'm going to lean on Q&A here. So
Okay.
I'm not running because I think I'm great. I'm running because I wanted a green candidate in this seat, and nobody else was crazy enough to challenge the incumbent. He's a machine man, an empty suit. It's pretty frustrating if you attend any of his town halls, because all he does is spout off the DNC talking points. I think one of the most valuable things that my campaign is doing right now is digging into fec.gov and house.gov to show what this man has done. It's really shocking to me how few of his constituents in this district understand what this man has done. And I'm talking about people that call his office regularly. And let's just take specifically the example of cluster munitions in Ukraine. And I know that or let's just say the Ukraine war, like, even though the Green Party had a majority opinion against fighting that war, I know there was a sizable minority faction in favor of fighting that war, arming Ukraine. But regardless of that, overwhelmingly, people on the broad left were against sending cluster munitions to Ukraine because they understood that to be a war crime. Mm-hmm. And I was a person who went into the office. It's the congressional district is in 4 counties, so there's 4 offices. So I went into my county office and I said to the staff, like, what's his position on this? What's his position on this? Here's my position. Here's my position, before I was running, or in the early stages of my running. And his staff would never answer, and they would never give any of the other activists an answer. And the fact is, he voted on it, like, and nobody knew that. And that, I think, is what's really shocking to me, is there was some kind of like NDAA with some kind of amendment where he ultimately did vote to send the cluster munitions to Ukraine. And even though overwhelmingly his constituents did not want that to be done, he did it, but then they didn't know. And so I see that as one of the probably most valuable things that my campaign is doing, is educating the activists in my community as to what he's doing. He voted to send cluster munitions to Ukraine. He voted to prohibit the reduction of our nuclear arsenal size. Nobody in my district knows that. And I mean, we've got a whole page of statements where we're digging into like, he's taken money from the pesticide manufacturers, and these people have been lobbying to use chemicals that have been banned by all the other countries, particularly in Europe. like these chemicals are giving brain cancer to the children of the farm workers. You know, there's a lot of agriculture that happens in my county and or in my district, but the constituents don't know that he takes money from these corporations to do the wrong thing. You know, and it's fossil fuels also. That's another thing that I think a lot of people don't understand, because the way that he portrays himself on social media via photo ops and whatever is, you know, he's climate. We got to address the climate crisis, but he's taken at least $50,000 that we've been able to identify via fec.gov from the fossil fuel companies, and he votes accordingly. And not only does he vote for new fossil fuel projects like the Mountain Valley Pipeline after the fact, and so maybe some people will make an argument that he's got to, you know, for the complexities of partisan politics, he's got to go along with the Democrats in passing this bipartisan bill to circumvent some kind of government shutdown. After the fact, he argues that you had to support this project. And actually, the Mountain Valley Pipeline is good because natural gas is a bridge to renewable energy, right? So he's a charlatan. And he apologizes for the fossil fuel industry, and he takes money from the fossil fuel industry. So I see that as my primary responsibility, is educating the activists about what's going on. And that's not to say that I don't have a chance of winning. I'll talk about that very briefly. In California, the way the congressional primary works is it's a nonpartisan primary. And what that means is that all of the candidates, regardless of party, are in a single pool, and the voters select the top two that go on to the general. And in my race, there are only 3 people running: a Dem, a Republican, and a Green. Okay, so I only have to convince people to vote for the Green to get it to the general, having a Dem and a Green, because it's like 80-20 split between the Dem and the Republican in the general in the past. Like, it's overwhelmingly Democrat, safe district, safe blue district. So I'm just trying to convince people, like, make this a race in the general where we talk about climate, not whether climate is real. You know, like if it's red versus blue, it's just like, is climate change man-made versus like, is natural gas a bridge? No, it's not. Let's have that argument. So I think that's really what I see my role as. And I'm going to take a step back and just say, like, you know, my primary objective is to build up the Green Party. You know, I'm running because I care about the Green Party. I'm not running because I care about me. I didn't want my name to, like, I had this concept for my campaign where it didn't have my name at all. It was like, that's stupid. You need to vote for it. But I was just looking at, I just pulled some data for from the state for my district, and I saw that the Green Party has grown by 20% in my county just over the past year.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah, it is. I agree. It is amazing. And so I've only just started looking into the data today, but it's really encouraging, because what I had expected to see was that we would have this surge in response to West, right? And I think everyone in this room was very disappointed by West. But that's not what I saw, which to me is very encouraging. Is it was actually like evenly distributed throughout the year, and I didn't see that it was isolated to any age, any generation. It was actually pretty evenly distributed. So I think that the people of this country can see the failure of the duopoly. And I don't think they're moving to the Green Party, which, again, 20% gain in a year is pretty remarkable. It wasn't in reaction to West. It wasn't reaction to Gaza. And, you know, I particularly care about Gaza. My campaign is focused on that. A call for a ceasefire, a call for an end to all military aid to Israel. But what I'm seeing in the data from my county and my district is a reaction against the duopoly. So I'm just going to end it there. We can do some Q&A.
Awesome. Yeah, just to speak about that rise in support for for Green parties, and to be honest, and other minor parties as well. You look at that Gallup poll from October, 63% of Americans say that Democrats and Republicans are doing such a poor job representing them. Not that they're just bad, they're doing such a poor job at their job that we need a strong third party. All right, Jason's been waiting for a little while.
Oh, I don't want to take up any more time, but I did want to sort of back up what Sean was saying about the connection between corporate money and voting record and how deeply entrenched that is within the Democratic Party. So I wanted to highlight on my own website, if you go to callforcongress.com and you look at Rick's receipts, we have done the deepest dive on any Democratic candidate or probably any Republican candidate in the entire country, the deepest dive on an entire 24-year career of lobbying, money, votes, statements. And it's really remarkable that Democrats who claim to be progressive will look at a candidate like the guy I'm challenging, Rick Larsen, and say, oh, that's a good Democrat, when we can like literally bring up a 35-page document of, oh, so this is what you stand for because that's what this guy is voting for. So I encourage everybody to go to my website and take a look at that and do the same work for your, I mean, it's a matter of going to Open Secrets and the FEC filings and digging back through newspaper articles and piecing this narrative together of, look, you actually have terrible representation. The representative you have is not the person, as Sean says, that they present themselves to be, and it's all documented. And the other thing that I wanted to say is Washington State has the exact same voting system that California is, and there's only 3 states in the nation that have this top 2 primary. It's California, Washington, and Louisiana, where it's an open pool for candidates, and I'm in the same position Sean had. Like, I'm just looking to get second place on the ballot. At that point, we can go through to November. So that's what California and Washington both do. So appreciate the little bit extra time there.
Of course.
Well, let me just comment on that. Like, I think this is probably my biggest challenge in my race is educating people. So this maybe will be entertaining to people, but this past weekend, some people were coming by my house to pick up some yard signs, and I happened to just run into them, and they were talking to another person who I knew was part of the Democratic Central Committee. And I thought they were together. I thought they'd arrived together. I thought he was a closeted supporter of mine. Anyway, we ended up in an argument because he wasn't a supporter. But he quickly went to this idea of like, well, we can't support you because, well, then we'll get the Republican elected. And so then I explained to him the structure of the election actually, I walked him through it to explain to him, like, actually, that's impossible. Like, a Republican can't get elected in an 80 Dem, 20 R district. And then his rebuttal to that was, well, it was pathetic. It was basically, well, nobody knows that. So then what's the point?
Okay.
But that's what we're facing. I feel like, especially in a district like this, it's a matter of public education. That's the real problem. One, so, I was in my opening remarks, I was focusing on the issue of people don't know how corrupt he is. They don't know that this Democrat is taking money from the weapons manufacturers and the fossil fuel companies and the pesticide manufacturers, et cetera, but also that they don't even have to vote for him. Like, they don't have to worry about getting a MAGA Republican elected. So I think that's the really big thing facing us is public education.
Exactly. A lot of these seats that either go uncontested by the Green Party are so blue that they are waiting to go green. And I think these 2 races here, Jason and yours, Sean, are prime examples for that in 2024. One more time, your website, Sean?
Oh, right. Sorry. It's seanforpeace.org. SEANFOR peace.org.
And that was Call for Congress for you, right? And Christina, I feel like you should get.
Oh, Khalil for Senate.com.
Perfect. And everyone will get an email with that. And I have not forgotten you, Justin. I just wanted to make sure. All right.
Hello.
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 Are we ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Do I speak?
Only if you want to. There's no pressure.
Oh yeah. So gosh, it's great to see everybody here. I'm so heartened by every Green. Every time I meet a Green and a Green supporter, it's very heartening to me because I really believe that this party is the path forward to hope in a world that seems so incredibly discouraging, and there's so much injustice and unnecessary death and violence. And I wanted to talk a little, I'll give you a little bit of background about me, but I wanted to also just share kind of general thoughts about why I'm running is the same reason I think you should run. It's the same reason I think everyone should run, and specifically run Green Party. Um, and so, but I'll start by just giving a little background. I am from Connecticut originally, although I lived in Cincinnati for a while in my high school years. And, I came back to the East Coast for school and medical school. And then I did 2 years of residency in clinical pathology at Yale in New Haven, and then I did a PhD in medical research at Yale, and gee, that puts me up until about 2008, and then for the next 10 years, I did research. It took me about 5 years to get the PhD, during which I was already doing research in virology, specifically viruses that infect tumors and cancerous cells. And I was trying to develop viruses as a treatment for cancer, something that will get the tumor sick, but not the person, because viruses can tell the difference. Anyway, it was very challenging work, and I enjoyed it. It was also got to be kind of frustrating when things don't go the way you want them to go. I got a grant, and then my ideas didn't work out, and that just happens sometimes in research. But anyway, in 2018, when my grant ran out, I felt that it was time for me to make a change in my life, because politics had always kind of consumed my attention. The injustices of the world, the war, the climate issue, economic injustice, social injustice issues, all kinds of things that always consumed my attention. And that's where I spent a lot of my free time, was as a Facebook warrior. But I always wanted to do more. And in 2018, I decided I was going to leave medicine and science behind and focus more on being an activist. Also, a musician, and I'm a piano teacher, and I have 2 kids and a wife. And so those are kind of the 3 big focuses of my life. I recently was hired by the Jill Stein campaign to be the deputy field director. So that's consuming a lot of my time. That's like I wake up and I start on that, and I keep doing that all day until it's time to sleep. So in terms of my Senate campaign, that's going to be a limitation on how much I am able to really push my own campaign. But I'm not too but I still want to be on the ballot. I mean, if there's another person in Connecticut who wants this ballot line and they want to run for the office and they have more time to really run for it, then I would happily let them do it. But, there are so many races in this country where there is no green on the ballot at all. And just having a person on the ballot with their name that you can vote green is so meaningful. And and because, so let me go into my kind of general thoughts about why the thing that we have to all be thinking is we have to all be thinking green. We have to be running green. We have to be fighting green, donating green. And I'll go back to when I was a Democrat. Like I used to think Republicans were the problem. I'll be honest. I used to think that way. I used to think that I knew the biggest problems in the world were some of the biggest problems were the climate issue, which I've been following for 30 years. It's been getting worse and worse and not addressed, and emissions are at an all-time high. We're not doing what we should be doing. It's just we have collectively failed. War as an issue. I mean, the Democrats are the ones who got us into Vietnam. I mean, we are economic empire. We go around the world using our economic strength as a pressure to get what we want out of countries. I mean, we used to be more an explicit empire, capturing islands in the Pacific to project our military power, and we still are actively a violent empire when we invade Iraq or support proxy wars, or the way we're supporting Israel right now, because they're our military base in the Middle East, basically. And and economic injustice, economic inequality, that's completely unnecessary, and it's because the powerful are the ones who are writing the rules. So, I always, in my estimation of what's at the root of these problems, I'm always trying to get to the bottom of the problem, is Wall Street. It's the powers at Wall Street. It's the people who want to make money doing nothing, the people who want to just be able to invest their money and have it come back with interest, and the leaders of industry and large corporations that want to make more money and more profit. And that's at the root of all three of those problems. The climate problem is because these large fossil fuel companies don't want to give up making large amounts of money, and nor do the people who are living off of those profits, who are living off of the dividends. And these wars of aggression and are at their root are economic aggression. They are all designed. I mean, basically all wars are wars that are designed to enrich the aggressor by getting more control over the resources or the markets in another country. And then, of course, economic injustice at its root is just the wealthy wanting to stay wealthy and exploiting people who are disadvantaged. So Wall Street, is basically, Occupy Wall Street had it right. They identified the enemy, and they were in the right, place. So again, I used to think that Republicans were the problem, and I used to think that Americans were not like. I used to think that people were the problem. I thought the solution to all these problems was just to convince enough people that the Democrats were right, the Republicans were wrong, and that that's why I was like a Facebook warrior and defending all these positions. And it took me a long time. I'm not proud to admit, but it took me a long time in my life and exposure to things like Listen Liberal, which is a tremendous book by Thomas Frank, to really understand that the Democratic Party is also serving Wall Street. The Democratic Party is also serving Wall Street. So they are also at the root of all these problems. And you can argue maybe the Republicans are a little worse, but it misses the more important point, that if you want to go left of the Democrats, there's nowhere for you to go in our two-party system. If you have concluded correctly that the Democrats are too corrupt and too subservient of Wall Street, even if you think they're not quite as bad as the Republicans, if you want something better, you don't get to express that in the ballot box. You are extorted by fear of the greater evil into voting for the lesser evil. And this is the root problem, our plurality voting system that lets you only have one vote instead of indicating your first choice and your second choice and your third choice. There's academics who've studied different electoral systems and their different outcomes, and plurality voting always results in a two-party system, because whatever third party people might be interested in, it's almost impossible for them to break through, because the lesser evil argument always seems to win the day in popular opinion, because you can't deny that there sometimes maybe one is slightly more evil than the other, but that misses the point that we shouldn't have to choose between maybe what is a slightly lesser evil and a greater evil. We should be getting to express our values. And so this is why I say, I used to think people were the problem. Now I don't. I have a lot of faith in people. I think the American people have a lot of good values. Not always. I mean, look, we've seen a lot of bigotry in America. We've seen a lot of prejudice, and there's no doubt that I'm not making a blanket statement about the goodness of the American people in that regard. But on these issues that I'm talking about, on climate, on economic justice, and on being aggressors on the international stage, Green Party values are not extreme values where these are centrist, commonplace, good values that are widely shared by people, but they go against the interests of Wall Street.
They're
And
hugely
so,
popular.
what's that?
Time after time, they're hugely popular. It's what the American people want,
Yeah.
but what's in the way? It's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, but everyone's afraid to vote for these values. And so what we've ended up with is a corrupt Democratic Party because they know they can take their donor money and serve Wall Street and then turn around and extort voters into voting for them out of fear. And that's been working for them, and that's their business model. And we can't live with this system. It's too corruptible a system. We need democracy. We need a system that allows the will of the people to come through. And because I believe that if we do that, it's going to get to the heart of a lot of these problems. And so we need ranked choice voting. And I don't like the top 4, top 5 system. That's a more picayune point. I like the using RCV in the general election the way they do in Maine, under Maine's RCV system, rather than the way they do in Alaska. But we need a more representative system. Of course, we need to get the money out of politics. Of course, we need public campaign finance. We need to reclaim public control of our democracy and have debates be required for running for office. I ran for Congress twice, and I only got to be in one debate because like one guy at an independent outlet decided he was interested in convincing, a local place to host a debate, and the TV station covered it. But the next time I ran, there was no debate. That should be required. And so, gosh, everyone, if we want to solve these problems, we have to fix democracy and make it more representative. And the only way to do that is to run third party, put your effort, your money, your time, where your heart is, where your values are, and give people and convince people, make this argument, convince people that this is the way forward, and just spinning our wheels in a two-party system. Voting Democrat isn't going to save us from Trumpism, because all of this corrupt two-party system that is not producing for people, that isn't solving people's fundamental problems. They're giving up on democracy, and they're either going to authoritarianism like Trump, or they're just stop voting. And this is that a vote for Biden is a vote for Trump in essence, because you are just voting for more of the same problems that's leading to like an increasingly mad political system. And so yes.
I think Mike has a question if you're open to it.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Mike, are you there?
Hi, everybody. I want to give you a quick update on 2 policies that are coming to the National Committee that relate to what you were talking about. Justin was just speaking about top 4, top 5, and while our platform calls for proportional representation, it doesn't oppose top 4 and top 5, which our big money is putting in to distract the need for reform and keep single seat districts. So that's number 1. The other one, since there was a question about the Supreme Court, we've got a plank that Howie and I have written that would call for binding ethics requirement for the Supreme Court and increasing the strength of other ones for other federal jurists, and to actually create a inspector general who would have the responsibility to see whether the Supreme Court justices are complying with the ethics requirements, and to have them file federal income tax disclosure. Over.
Thank you, Mike. And I just want to throw in that I have a hard stop at 8 o'clock because I have a call with Jill that I have to be on at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like Jason.
I guess I wanted my final word to be, since we're about to close up here, is a message of urgency. And the reason I say urgency is that we are heading into climate breakdown. And I'm not gonna roll into all of the milestones and markers, the benchmarks, but we are heading into climate breakdown. We have a very short window. I will say that personally, I don't know what we're going to look like for a 2028 election. That is how dire I perceive what's going to be happening in the next few years in regards to climate. So 2024 is a huge shot for us. I want to give a shout out to Jill Stein for stepping up to run in this race. Justin, thank you for being her field director, and everybody get behind Jill for 2024 because I really do, and this is like not even a doomer message. Like I think this might be our last shot to get this ship turned around before things get really dire. And the last closing word I want to say is free Palestine.
Thank you. All right, Sean, Christina, would you like the last word?
Sure, I'll say something very briefly. So I can tell you that within the past 2 months, I've succeeded in establishing a county council here in my county of Santa Cruz. And I had been trying to do that for, I don't know, 14 months. And when I first started doing that 14 months ago, I couldn't get even my closest friends to switch to the Green Party to help me do that. But I can tell you, just looking at the data, the voter registration data for the Secretary of State for the past year, I saw a blip in November from when I was pushing people, friends, and I did succeed, by the way, in establishing the council. You know, there was some like number of signatures I had to gather. They had to be valid. I had to submit it, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so what happened from 14 months ago to like 10 months ago or whatever? I think one is that I ran. And I think that even though nobody really expects me to beat the incumbent, I think it mattered to people to see someone running within the Green Party, running on progressive values. I think it gave people hope to see that. And two, Gaza. I mean, I think, yeah, everybody's just like this. This is a genocide that it will be a canonical example of genocide for the past century. That people will refer back to it for another century as an example of genocide. So and I feel really uncomfortable talking about that as an issue to help our party. I don't feel comfortable saying that. But I can tell you anecdotally that people are disgusted by seeing the Democratic Party line up behind that. So I see a huge change as a person trying to establish a Green Party between last year and this year. So I think there's reason to be hopeful that we're turning things around. I know when I looked at the voter registration data over the past decade, we got hurt huge by Bernie. I think everybody knows that, right? So many people switched their registration to Dem to vote for Bernie in the primary of 2016. I think we're recovering from that now.
Just in time.
I really wish I could stay. I have to say goodbye. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, Justin, for being here. All right, Christina.
Hi, everyone. So I will just say that I know change is scary, and this is just for the general public thinking about switching to Green Party. But I can tell you that nothing, if we don't step outside of our comfort zone and we don't feel a little bit uncomfortable, there will never be change. And I took a leap of faith where I was just, let's see what happens, just joining the Green Party, and it was the best decision I've ever made. And the amount of people, every single person actually cares in the Green Party. When I have, and I'm sure Jason could even share, when he's like met, Democrats that pretend to care in the news media, but behind closed doors, they're just like, I don't care if your child dies. And so the Green Party actually cares. And to see that is refreshing, because I almost dropped out of the race and I didn't want to do this anymore, because it came to a point where I'm like, am I the only person in the entire world that actually cares in a political atmosphere? And that's what I'll leave you guys with, is change is scary, but change is necessary, and being scared is the only way to grow.
Thank you all so much for being willing to come to this Zoom forum, and wishing you all the luck and the best on your campaigns. Hope to stay in contact. Happy New Year. Thank you guys so much for coming.